Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It shouldn't surprise you to know that I support the development of renewable energy, including wind, solar, biomass, and hydroelectric power. Week after week, Republicans on this panel have said that technology provides the only real path to a global warming solution. We can't stop using energy, but we can develop ways to create energy without releasing CO2. It may also not surprise you to know that I voted against government regulations requiring power companies to include renewable energy as one of its sources. So how can I say I'm for renewable energy and then vote against requiring it? The answer is simple, because I firmly believe that if we are to find realistic global warming solutions, Congress should encourage technological competition, but must not pick who wins and who loses. By requiring electric utilities to generate a portion of their energy through renewable sources, the government is picking the winners, and in these cases the winners will be certain types of renewable sources. The problem with the renewable portfolio is that it emphasizes the means and not the ends. After all, the goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in July, the House passed legislation that requires utilities to use renewable sources to produce 15% of its electricity. I am skeptical of most regulation, but this one is particularly onerous because it discounts the progress some electric utilities have made, and only because they use methods not favored by certain congressional leaders. One utility that would fall prey to this terrible idea is the Southern Company, and I am happy to welcome Mr. Chris Hobson, the company's Senior Vice President for Research and Environmental Affairs. Should this bad policy ever become law, utilities that are able to meet the renewable standards would presumably produce 15% of its electricity without producing any CO2, and that would be progress. But not for the Southern Company. As Mr. Hobson will testify, 18% of the electricity generated by the Southern Company today emits no carbon dioxide whatsoever. So the Southern Company has nothing to worry about with these regulations, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, the Southern Company has big worries, and so should all of its ratepayers. With 15% of its electricity generated by nuclear power and another 3% from hydropower, Southern Company has already met the emissions cuts required these proposed regulations seek to create. But because the utility doesn't employ the use of wind turbines or solar panels, it will be forced to pay government fees for its failure to comply. And that will likely cost the company $1 billion a year, which will be passed on in every ratepayer's monthly bill. Like all smart energy utilities, the Southern Company is researching its renewable energy options. But in the areas in the South it serves aren't conducive to many forms of renewable energy. The South has simply too much clouds and not enough wind if these regulations come to pass. And Southerners will literally pay the price for their geographic location. Congress should be promoting technological solutions to global warming, not picking which technology is its favorite. That isn't a path to a solution. It's only a path to higher electricity bills. Additionally, I'd like to welcome Governor Ritter to the committee. The governor is here to talk about Colorado's new energy economy and its goals of a 20% renewable standard. A recent report commissioned by the state legislature shows that Colorado does have an energy economy that produces 70,000 jobs, $640 million in tax revenue, and adds $22.9 billion to the state's economy. Of course, that energy economy comes from the oil and gas sector, then I suspect renewable energy has far less impact on Colorado. So I'm curious to hear how the governor plans to nurture a new energy economy without slowing an oil and gas sector that appears to be a foundation to the state's economy. Thank you, Governor. I'm curious about the transmission line siting issues because very frequently the places that are best for renewable energies, particularly solar and wind, are not where the people are. And I've noticed that the wind resources appear to be in eastern Colorado. The solar resources appear to be in southwestern and south central Colorado. I found in Wisconsin that people don't like transmission lines, you know, running through their property. How do you plan to deal with that?
Thank you, Mr. Sensenbrenner. There's a couple of issues. One was just the availability of transmission, because we had always been told, especially during the campaign when I was running, because we made renewable energy a big thing, they said, you know, an impediment is even building the transmission. And we went to the REAs and we said to them, the Rural Electric Associations, what does it take? And they said, we really need to have bonding capacity to borrow against this, and we believe that there's this ability on our part to build out the transmission if, in fact, we can get the bonding capacity. When I just did this ribbon cutting in the southeast part of the state last week, there are about 12 farmers who are involved either in having the turbines or in having some part of the transmission lines on their property, and basically the farmers in the eastern plains understand the value to the economy of this, and to date has not been a problem. There was a meeting in the southeast, the southern eastmost county. It's called Baca County. It's a siting for transmission, not a terribly big, well-populated county, and 65 farmers showed up. Very small, not because they want to understand how they can be a part of this. So it's not been a problem for us. I do appreciate the point. And in the West, we've always had this issue. There are transmission lines that run across some places that are otherwise not inhabited, and so we had that experience, but we, I think, also understand that with this renewable energy economy comes the need on our part to provide the transmission. We're talking to other states about a regional transmission grid that we think has to be a part of our thinking here. But again, to date, siting wasn't the problem. It was thinking about how we pay for it going forward. Okay. We did two different things that will help us build out transmission.
Okay. I have one further question relating to traditional energy. Xcel Energy is proposing a coal-fired plant that uses some pretty significant technology that reduces CO2 emissions and sequesters a lot of the other ones. Do you support these technologies, and would you support streamlining the permitting process for those who wish to build this plant?
Well, I certainly support the technology, and I mean, everybody that we speak to around issues of climate change will say, and we've had several meetings about this. I just met with the governors of Wyoming, Utah, and West Virginia, actually, as coal-producing states, to talk about where we are with respect to the technology and what we need from the federal government in either production tax credits or investment tax credits. But I very much support our going forward with research and development and providing incentives for not just the research and development, for building these projects to scale where the technology is proven, both in gasification and stripping off the CO2. So I believe it's something that has to be a part of our energy portfolio as we go forward, and I would very much support the technology. As it relates to the permitting process, you know, as long as those things that I think are still the responsibility of government, air quality, water quality, and even with us, a fair amount of other issues around land use, as long as those things are still part of the process and thought about carefully, I would support us being able to do that in a quicker fashion.
Great. Gentleman's time has expired.